should I sit up better?
Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Makers Roundup right here on RVN TV. I am your host, Mark Iorio. Today I have the pleasure of interviewing Dave Seibel from AGS Aurora Financial Services. Dave, welcome.
Thanks, Mark. Pleasure to be here.
On the show.
Pleasure.
Yeah, it's been a long time. I mean, we've kind of known each other in different circles. Of course, I've met your partner a long time ago,
Yes.
Fred Chalmers, and I know your wife from probably 20 years ago at least, right?
Now you get to meet me.
Now I get to meet you, finally. Thanks for coming in.
My pleasure.
Yeah.
Thanks for having me.
You're welcome. I've always been sort of fascinated by people who sort of take an interesting or say, not circuitous. Circuitous sometimes means that you went around a different path, but to their current career path. But you kind of did that, right? You didn't really jump right into financial services.
No, not at all. Started out in the corporate world.
Yeah.
And even that was a bit of an accident. You know, I was in engineering school and had, wanted to go actually work in a space program, and Challenger blew up, which kind of ended that, and I ended up on Wall Street.
Yeah.
So I was corporate guy for 20 some odd years. Worked my way up there. I was working, ended up with Revlon, working with, for Ron Perlman's companies.
Oh, yeah.
Was appointed treasurer of Coleman, went through the sale of Coleman to Sunbeam. That blew up, and a bunch of us from all of Perlman's companies ended up down at Sunbeam. This was the end of, I guess it was mid 1998.
So is that Chainsaw Al?
That was, we took over when Chainsaw Al blew up the company.
Oh, wow. Gee
we
whiz.
went down, and we went down to try to save it.
Okay.
And I was, at the time, I was the CFO International.
Wow.
And I was traveling all over the world. It was the Y2K
scare
issue,
Yeah.
scare.
Yeah.
And I just got to the point by the probably mid '99 that I had kind of had it.
Yeah.
My son was 4 or 5 years old at the time.
Sure.
Never got to see him, and I just said enough.
Yeah.
And we negotiated pretty good packages to go down there in the first place to Boca, and I just pulled December 31st, 1999 was my last day in the corporate world.
Wow. And that was kind of the tipping point, right? You felt like that was it.
I really didn't know what I was going to do at the time.
Yeah.
But I knew I had a year to figure it out.
Yeah.
And started a company actually developing trading systems.
Interesting.
Was working with some guys on the Florida NIBOT because they were all trading. That was the .com days, so they were all trading. They wanted, the commodities floor was kind of slow. They all wanted to trade stock. I had developed some trading systems. It was a good time. I had a good model where I was just leasing it to these guys, and basically it was the same thing that I kept repackaging and leasing it to different traders.
Yeah.
And that was great until 9/11, when the towers came down and the floor was, destroyed, and they went to the backup site, and then it was time to reinvent myself again.
Again, yeah. So what was the tipping point there, Dave, to get into the financial services side of the business?
Well, in
01.
2000, well, really, I had started after 9/11, I had started just doing some trading. I figured I had these things. I was just trading, and was fairly successful with a strategy I developed for trading currencies, because in my corporate days, that's a lot of what I did was hedging strategies, currency hedging.
Yeah.
And I decided that, hey, I can, this is pretty good. I can make a go of this.
Yeah.
Started trading. First, you got the friends and family money, and then next thing I knew, I think probably, I don't know, maybe 04-ish, I started a hedge fund.
Wow.
And, small hedge fund, brought in some money from some other hedge funds, fund of funds.
Sure.
And we were fairly successful at it. Honestly, hated every minute of it.
Did you really?
Yeah. It was, as my son said, you know, what does Daddy do? He sits there and watches lines on the computer all day. And currency was basically 24, not 24/7, but it was about 24. 5.5, you know, Sunday night at 3 o'clock, the markets opened in New Zealand, the currency markets, and they didn't close until Friday afternoon here. And there was no end. So it was interesting.
There's something to be said about doing something that just not making money on money, right? It's about doing something that really, you know, drives you. Right?
You know, we were making money, but I didn't enjoy it. You weren't creating anything. And I hear that, you know, it's funny, I hear that from my son, I hear that from a lot of the kids these days, where when it comes to working for companies and the way that we kind of started out, and they have a real desire to have that, you know, do something good, to build something, to create something. And that was part of the problem, is I felt that we weren't, you know, you're just making money. At the end of the day, it was just, you know, a spreadsheet that said how much did we make today or lose today, and what did that translate into months and everything else in quarters. And it was it was a lot. I don't want to say it was a lot of work, because I wasn't doing manual labor. I was sitting there. And then it got easier because we started getting into, as the technology developed, we could automate a lot of it. Handed it off to some guys in Chicago at one of the brokers. They were running it. So that's when I started, you know, this is probably early 2008, when I started looking for kind of the next thing. You know, we'd already gone through a period where, I guess it was the end of '06, it was actually the day after Thanksgiving in '06, when the first hedge fund calls me up and says, "Dave, sorry, we need our money back, we're done."
Really?
And they go, "You're the only one making money for us, we're going out of business."
No kidding.
And that's how I knew something was going on, because you had this progression of hedge funds that were going under. Even though we had great performance, you could have the best performance in the world, but if you have no money to manage, it's just a paper. You know,
that's interesting.
So we saw that, and at that time I was starting to look for, okay, what's next?
No kidding. Wow. So let's fast forward a little bit. We're going to talk about your book in a minute, because that's pretty impressive. The Don't Run Out of Money. That's a great title, by the way. What's the passion? What drives you? What drives you to do what you do today for AGS Aurora Financial Services, Dave? Because it's not just about making money. It's about dealing with people and changing lives, isn't it?
Yeah, and you know the thing, and when I got into this business, one of the things I noticed is, and it's funny, and I talk about this in the book, it's really how, one of the early chapters in the book, you know, who's your guy? Because everybody's got a guy. It was one of the first things I noticed. I'd start talking to people, like, oh, I have a guy, right? I got a guy. And, you know, back in '08, the reason I got into the business was because I was always the go-to guy. I was a financial guy way back. You know, I had a Reuters box in my office when, you know, there was maybe 3 people in the companies actually had access to stock prices. And I was always one of them, because I was, you know, in cash and treasury and all that kind of stuff. So anytime something came up, people would ask me, you know, what's going on? What do you think of this? So in '08, when it was literally hitting the fan. I mean, nothing. It was one of the few times in history where, you know, they say the correlations broke down. That's the technical term for saying everything was bad.
Yeah, it's a mess.
And I was getting calls from people. Ultimately, my father was one of the first ones that called me and said, "Hey, you got to get up here. I don't know what's going on, and we're losing a lot of money." I think his actual term was, "You're losing money," meaning my inheritance. So when I got up there, the first thing I did is I sit down, I'm looking at his stuff. I called his guy. Crickets. No answer, no voicemail. And I was starting to hear this from more and more people who were calling me saying, Dave, can you come over? We don't know what to do.
Right.
And it just so happens at the time I was doing a little bit of consulting for somebody I knew that was running a Guardian General Agency. And started to get involved with them, and just now had kind of the access to become an advisor. And I think somebody had said to me, you're working with all these people, why don't you just get paid for it?
Right.
And then one day I just sat there, you get these flashes of brilliance every now and then. I'm like,
There's an idea.
Well, there's an idea. I don't know anything about it. I don't know how to do this, but getting back to the question where, what drives me and that kind of stuff, it's when I see people who, we've all gone through it. We all went through '08. We all went through that kind of financial nightmare. And now what happens is people are a little less, even though we've had a great run the last 10 years in the market.
Yeah.
Regardless of how much money people have, everybody's the same. They never think they're going to be able to retire.
Right.
And they come in and they think they're in horrible shape. And a lot of that has to do with stuff we talk about in the book, which is the black boxes that you can dial up on a computer and punch in 3 numbers and somehow get a financial plan out of it.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
People believe that because why would all these companies lie about stuff like this, right? God knows people don't lie in this business. But to see when you sit down with people and you go through the process that we go through and to get them to a point where you say, okay, you're really okay.
Yeah.
You can spend money. You're gonna be fine. You're not gonna run out of money.
Right.
We may have to tweak things, do different things, look at things a little differently.
Yeah.
But you're gonna be okay. And to see the relief that people have, the difference between when they come into the process and when they leave the process,
That's
the
awesome.
difference, and that's what drives it.
That's great. We're going to have to take a quick break. By the way, we are brought to you by Hiram and Solomon, which is an outstanding cigar. I owe Dave a cigar. We typically have a stash of these for our guests, so I owe you a cigar.
I will hold you to that.
When we come back from the break, you better hold me to that. We're going to talk about Dave's book, Don't Run Out of Money, which we were just talking about. And the next question I'm going to ask you is your unique style of finding new clients and how you do that. We'll be right back after a message from our sponsor.
Aren't broken. They've simply experienced. If they were human, we would call them wise. They would be the ones with tales to tell and stories to write. The ones dealt a bad hand who responded with courage. Do not pity a shelter dog. Adopt one.
Say we've got grit, and we'll take it as a compliment. Because it's our uncommon drive, our spark within, that brings us together and sets us apart. We are temple made. And when others take shortcuts, when others take breaks, when others take the easy way, We take charge.
Add us on social media to watch bloopers, behind-the-scenes footage, previews, and more.
I work 13 hours a day, 6 days a week. So when I'm off the clock, I gotta get stuff done. So when I need a snack, I need something healthy, tasty, and easy to eat. Like wonderful pistachios without the shells.
Welcome back to Rainmakers Roundup. I am your host, Mark Iorio. I'm with Dave Seibel. Dave is the founder, co-founder, right?
Founder of the business, yep.
Right. AGS, Aurora Financial Services. I didn't even ask you how you came up with that name, but...
Actually...
don't tell me it was like one of the first names in the alphabet, so you...
No. The AAA Aardvark Plumbing or something like that. Yeah, no, it was... Aurora came from something my son used to love way back when, Sleeping Beauty and...
Oh, yeah,
and
okay.
that. And then AGS was actually the name... All Growth Solutions, which was the company of someone, a good friend of mine, Marty Peterson, who ran a company, kind of a IT type firm that he was doing, and we had partnered up for a while on some software, another business that was going on at the time. And when I branched over into the financial services, Aurora was taken, looking at websites. Yeah. So we said, AGS Aurora.
I like it.
And that's how it kind of stuck from there.
That's cool. So you've got this, Fred Chalmers works with you?
Yes.
Okay. Unbelievable. I met Fred a number of years ago. He started a networking group, I guess, with you, Dave, right?
Yeah, we started the group.
Not too long ago,
wasn't it? Well, actually now it's probably 7, 8 years maybe now.
Okay, 7, 8. They have 7,000 people in this networking group.
Yeah.
And I'll bet you Fred has met, I don't know, more than half of them.
Probably.
Yeah. But the beauty of it, I don't want you to talk a little bit about that, because it's not what you think with regard to financial services. They are so low key. You never put your arm on anyone.
No.
No,
actually, it's just the opposite.
Yeah. Talk about it.
Well, when we started the group, whenever it was actually funny. It was the week before Christmas. Okay. Whatever year that was. And this was a service that was provided by one of the companies I was working with. And they said, we'll build you a network of 500 people. And back then it was easy because in LinkedIn you had unlimited messaging to the people in groups that you belong to. So what they did is we joined groups, and then some service would just email people and say, join our group.
Right.
What we did is we said, let's start meeting these people and bringing them into the office and just sitting down and saying, what do you like about your group? What don't you like about it? And I don't think, without exception, everybody said the same thing, is that every network group is either run by or has a financial guy who's in the top echelon there. And they're just a royal pain that they don't stop. They call, you got to meet me, you got to do this. It's like I've heard the same thing with some of the other groups out there. And we just said, okay, we're going to take a different tact. So, things developed over the years, but basically what we've done is I take a back seat to the whole thing. Fred has become just an incredible networker. And his primary goal is to help people first. He'll sit down with them, as you know, he wants to help. How can he help you? He has an incredible knowledge of LinkedIn. And so what he does is he invites people to join the group. They join the group. He'll invite them out for a cup of coffee. And they'll sit down and he'll say, what can I do for you? How can we help you?
Right.
And he does a lot of work showing people how to use LinkedIn, how to use the group, and we've had, one of the first successes, and this is how I think he kind of got addicted to it, where that first week, some of the first people that were in the group, there was a woman who was, I believe, a recruiter who was trying to find somebody, and there was a guy who had just lost his job.
Yeah.
I think it was in IT, I'm not really sure.
Yeah.
Fred put them together, and the guy got the job.
Perfect
And this
fit.
was the week before Christmas, so what
Oh,
kind of
geez.
better story?
Yeah.
And he's been honestly doing it ever since. And so he'll meet with people, and during the course of the conversation, if he thinks there's a fit, both from a personality standpoint and other things, that he will invite them, he'll start to talk to them, and he'll invite them in to meet me.
Yeah.
And that's it. That's been the
That-
driving force behind the business for the last
it's
3-4 years.
And it's really low key. It really is. It's very comfortable. The conversations are comfortable. You don't even know. A lot of times, you don't even know what he does until you look at his card and it says AGS Aurora Financial Services.
Yep.
He doesn't really say this is who I work for until he brings out his business card.
And,
you go,
and Fred is such a regular guy. I mean,
Yeah,
he is
he's
the
fun.
regular guy.
You hit it off with him almost
Yeah,
immediately.
everybody loves him.
Loves him,
He's
yeah.
so low key, easy to talk
Yeah.
to that, and it's just been. I wouldn't be where I am in the business without
him.
what he's been doing and without Fred.
So translate that into what you think makes AGS Aurora Financial Services different from the millions or thousands of other ones out there.
Yeah,
Dave.
well, that conversation could take a couple hours because
We don't have a couple.
and a lot of that's in the book. But
Yeah.
honestly, I think the biggest difference is when you talk about wealth managers or financial advisors, they're kind of catch-all titles. They don't mean anything.
Right.
And there's been some statistics. A company, I think CEG, did a study a while ago. I saw this, and I'm not sure the exact numbers anymore, but 90-some-odd% of the people who call themselves wealth managers only handle one piece, and that's the investment part of it. They're investment consultants, investment managers, however you want to refer to themselves.
Right.
So if you go to a lot of the big name companies, you go and you get a portfolio.
Right.
Which is great. I mean, if that's what you need, if that's, not that there's anything wrong with that. We kind of said that there's more to it than that. The people that we saw had other issues. So I decided that, wealth management had to be more than the investment consulting piece. There were other pieces to it.
Sure.
There's, what I call the risk management piece of it, which really encompasses everything else. Because when people ask me what I do, I think my primary role for the families that we work with is to be a risk manager.
Yeah. And try to mitigate that for
And
families.
try to mitigate all the risks that they're going to come across, and not just market risk, which is not, we tend to downplay that a little. So then there's, relationship management, really how you're dealing with all the other people that you need to, whether it's accountants, lawyers, whatever it is, to tie all the pieces together. And then there's what I think is probably the biggest difference is the actual planning.
Yeah.
That we do. We base everything off of financial planning. I do very little in the way of what I would call transactional business. It's mostly what we do is full service, and we do cash flow based financial planning that's really designed to put people in to answer the questions that they have.
Right.
And it's not about, in the book I go into it about the difference between goal-based planning and cash flow-based planning, where, these calculators basically, they look at retirement as a goal.
Right.
And I'm like, well, no, retirement's no different than today,
Exactly,
except your
yeah.
paycheck's coming from somewhere else.
Exactly, yeah.
So it can't be a goal, it's not one number.
Yeah.
And I think all that together and just our philosophy of, you know, I always, one thing I always say to people is I'm licensed to do everything, so I don't need to do anything.
Right. Yeah.
I don't work for anyone. There's no company that's telling me you have to hit this quota, you have to sell these products.
Right.
You know, you need to sell more insurance, you need to, you know, whatever it is.
Yeah.
We don't have that. I don't, just as an ethical matter, I guess this goes back to my corporate days, I don't
You're product agnostic.
Well, definitely product agnostic, but I don't partake of the, you know, the prizes, the trips, those things, because I don't want to be beholden to anybody or any one company.
Yeah. We are, we're running, we're down to a couple minutes probably left in the session. I wanted to know how or why you wrote the book, and then I've got one last question for you. So talk about the book for a minute. Don't Run Out of Money. How to Plan and Invest for Retirement Success, which you're just talking about, by David Seibel. Or your dad, I mean, your dad might call it Seibel, but
well, he does. Yeah. We don't know where that
Seibel
came from, but that's my father.
Yeah.
Basically, I wrote the book, excuse me, because there's so many misconceptions, misinformation, old wives' tales, you know, rules of thumb, all of this stuff, which just isn't true. May have been true at one time. In the book, I refer to people, you know, as bobbleheads, because it's funny. You can sit there and talk to people. We actually did this experiment with somebody once, which I won a nice steak and some scotch from it, where, you know, I talked to somebody for a half hour with a couple other guys there, and I said, you know what, I'm going to talk to this guy for a half hour. I'm going to say nothing that makes any sense.
He's going to shake his head,
and he's just going to sit there because he loves the markets, loves to talk, and always wants to pick your brain. And he just sat there and went like this for a half hour. And what I noticed is that you know, people and even other advisors are basing people's financial plans on things that just aren't true.
Yeah, they're not true.
So what happens is they've just become so well accepted that they're actually dangerous.
Yeah, it's almost like fact. You say it long enough,
right,
and it becomes like it's.
And
it's
what
real.
happens is now that people are living longer,
these
things are becoming a bigger issue.
Yeah.
You know, my father and stepmother. My father just turned 91. My stepmother is 93.
Wow.
And, you know, this is, you know, we took care of them after '08, and they will never run out of money.
Wonderful.
And it's a great feeling. I actually have to get them to spend money.
Yeah.
Is really what it comes down to.
Yeah.
And that's what it's about.
That's awesome. Well, pick this up. It's on Amazon. It's a great book, and it's going to be pretty easy read. I love reading books about financial planning and the markets. Who inspires you? Where do you find your inspiration?
Well, different things at different times. I mean, one of the biggest inspirations for making the move and doing what I did was my son. I saw that I just wanted to spend the time, and you know, sure, life could have been easier if you stay in the corporate world and you get a paycheck. You know, my ex could never understand why. You know, she's an old IBMer. You know, back in the big blue days. So she could never understand why you'd want to try to do something on your own. But the times we've spent, the stories that my son and I, the things that we've done that I could have never done if I was back in the corporate world, traveling all over the place. And that was really one of the biggest ones. And you know, I'm also inspired by the families that we work with, and when they have, you know, when they come in and you know, they think they're in trouble, they think they can't make it, that they're not going to be able to retire, they can't afford the things they want to do, and you get done and you say, you know, you're fine.
That's awesome. Great stuff.
That's what drives it.
Yeah. It's been a pleasure. It really has.
Same here.
Thank
you, Mark. I
You're
appreciate
welcome,
it.
Dave. Hey, would you do me one last favor and look
Absolutely.
into that camera right there and tell everyone how to get in touch with you, please?
Very easy. You can give us a call at 732-875-0101. Get me directly, or our website at agsaurora.com.
Perfect. Been a pleasure.
Same here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, that is a wrap for Rainmakers Roundup for this week on RVN TV. We'll see you next Wednesday at the same time. Have a wonderful and safe week, everyone.